Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to the Do What Is Necessary live stream, coming to you live from a sunny short and t-shirt weather here in Columbus. Last week we had 2 inches of snow on the ground. This week it's like 82 degrees. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy to be back in shorts and a t-shirt. So let me know where you're tuning in from today. So we got a few that are joining us as repeat guests this week. We have Steve Brand joining us. Anybody want to get Steve a beer? You're welcome to, because I know it's beer time for you over in the UK. But yeah, thanks, Steve, for joining us today. Let me know that you can hear me okay. We'll get the video running all right before we bring on our awesome, cool guest this afternoon. So it's afternoon for me. It's 3 p.m. here in the Midwest. So we got Mike Joseph on the show today. So he want to say thank you for the T-shirt. So I'm going to give you a shout out right at the beginning of the show, Mike. So thank you for rocking the T-shirt. So there you are, my friend. That's Mike Joseph rocking his Team Orange T-shirt. So thanks for checking the show out again this week, Mike. We appreciate it. All right, there we go. Lots of comments coming in today. We've got a hot topic. We're gonna drop it like it's hot today. So we appreciate you tuning in to the show again today. So let me just flip over here. We'll see where we got everybody tuning in from. So Bruce Skinner joining the show today. So thank you, Bruce, for checking the show out again. Steve is from Aberdeen. And we've got Robert Givens joining us from the UK. So we got a strong UK contingent again this week, as normal. I've talked about switching the time of the show, but I've had a few people say, nope, this beer time, wine time in the evening works best for them, so we will leave well enough as is. Dan Foote, Anchorage, Alaska. So I think you are my first guest from Alaska, so welcome to the show, Dan. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We've got a very, very important topic for the IT industry, for entrepreneurs. Mike's tuning in from Mass, so right outside of Boston. So Mike said he loves my new merch pick with Mike. So appreciate that for sending that over. So all right, so we've got all the good stuff. Obviously, everybody can hear and see me all right. So let's get right into our topic and welcome our guest onto the show today. This is a repeat guest onto the show today. So welcome, Pete Matheson, to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, as always.
We appreciate it, man. I think we were going back and forth, and I realized you were actually the very first guest that I had on this show. We started this show on April Fool's Day last year, and I think you and I did a show together. It was like June or July. I think it was in the summer. But yeah, good times. So I'm glad to have you back. I'm glad that we didn't put you into therapy with the first guest appearance here on the show. That's why I call it. This is afternoon therapy for me. In the middle of the week, this has given me something to do during COVID, and it's been fun. It's been a fun ride. So. And welcome a few more to the show. So Bruce and Steve are best buddies hanging out. So welcome, Dan. So if you guys have questions for Pete as we dive into the topic today, we talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about running a business, specifically an IT business, and the mental health crisis. That is our topic. Could this be the thing that brings down the IT industry? And I know that's kind of a clickbaity title, but I think the reality of where we're at right now in the IT industry cannot be minimized. So that's why I brought Pete on the show to talk about that, to be able to dive into a subject that I think for the most part in the IT industry is kind of taboo. Nobody really wants to tackle this topic, but we all know that it exists. But I think it's time that we get this conversation out into the open and really peel back some of the layers of being able to help the people that we love in the industry that Pete and I have a lot of affection for. So Pete, I figured you and I would catch up on the show. So you sold your MSP, I think, what was it, literally a week before lockdown last year?
Yeah, March the 5th. So for the UK here, 2 weeks before the lockdown happened.
Gotcha. So what's the ride been like since leaving the MSP game for you?
Personally, incredible in a way. I mean, obviously we've had a most horrendous year in terms of the lockdown and COVID and everything, but just the complete shift in what's happened from going from running a business through to this kind of new life where it's lots of YouTube, which I'm doing a lot of, working with other IT businesses, and it's just lifted a lot of stress and hassle and pressure off of me. So it's been incredible, and it sounds horrible because I know people have like lost their lives and lost their jobs and things, but equally, I can't lie, I've quite enjoyed the last year.
Yeah. Yes, you've had a lot more time with your family than before. We were talking a little bit before the show with that, and I think that's really why we do what we do. Is for the people
Maybe a
that
little
we
bit too
love.
much time with the family. I
Yeah.
wasn't quite planning on spending that much time,
I know
but
it's
it's
been
been
on the
fantastic.
reverse on my side. My wife will be happy when we go back to normal to get me out of the house with the label maker. Just get out of here. But no, it's been an interesting ride the last year, and and like I said, I started this show because I remember what it was like in 2008. Nowhere near what this last year has been. But when everything grinded to a halt, and I have a 4-year-old kid at home running a 4-year-old business, and I remember how lonely that was. I remember just trying to find somewhere to fit somebody that could understand what I was going through. And that's really what I want to kind of hone in on today, to help people to understand. Those of you who are in the tech industry, we understand the pressures of running the businesses in the IT industry, but I think I want this to also be an eye-opening thing for the people that might be our clients or potential clients, to really understand the nature of what this business is, and what it has been doing to people for a while. And I don't think we've quite seen the total effects of this last year. So Barbara, welcome from Nova Scotia, Canada. We appreciate you being a repeat guest as well. Barbara joined us we kicked off this conversation last week with my interview with Ian Adam, and we started to talk about those things, the work-life balance of being an entrepreneur. But just to enlighten everybody on, what is it really like running an MSP? From somebody who's been outside of the game less time than I've been out 7 years. June 30th this year, I've been out 7 years of running my own business. Got out of the IT industry in December of 2014 completely, and been doing this since. But help everybody understand what it's like to start, build, run, and eventually sell an MSP.
It's definitely challenging. There's a lot of kind of pressure that's put on you, but and it's funny coming out of it now. Coming out of this end and having sold and everything, you kind of realize that lots of the pressure was put on by yourself. The pressure is on you, and I had the same thing when I came home every day. You're just thinking, oh, if I do a little bit more work and check a few more emails and replace those emails, then you'll deliver a really good service and maybe you'll win some more customers. And it's just a bit of a never-ending cycle, I found personally. And it's very much all about personal self-control, because now I'm out of it. You know that you don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. But it's still a tempting thing of like, oh, an inquiry's come in. Let's respond to it straight away. We need to respond to it because someone else is going to get them. And so it's just a bit of a never-ending cycle, I found personally. And there's all the challenges you've got to deal with. Yeah, particularly when you're starting up the business, you need to bring in money very, very quickly for most instances. You've left your security, your secure job. You've maybe got a few months or weeks or whatever of savings. Your focus is get some money in at all cost effectively. So you do whatever you can. But in the meantime, you still got to try and figure out the whole operations of how to run the business, the systems and services you need to be using, how to price things, how to go out and network with people. And, if you're a bit of an introvert like me, you don't really like going out and physically walking into rooms of people you don't know. There's all the things, the finances, the legals, the management, the customer relationship side of things. There is just so much and nobody, mostly within the MSP world, that certainly from my experience and from who I've met, most people are techies. We're really great at fixing things, but we have none of the other experience. Nobody's taught us how to do it. It's all just self-taught for most of us as well. So it's just, oh, it's challenging, man. You must have had the same thing, I imagine. Were you a bit of a tech head, and then you kind of moved into the starting the business and expanded from there?
I've been around business. My first business I was 8 years old when I started my first business. I know people laugh at that. I had a older brother that was like a little less than 2 years older than me, two older cousins. So we were always doing something. We actually, my first business was taking 10-pound slabs of chocolate, melting it down, putting it in molds, and going around my neighborhood selling it. Um, so I liked that aspect of being an entrepreneur and being able to find my own way. Got into the tech and, late into high school because I was into, cars, got into computer science. I think I was a junior in high school. Then when I got out, just it was always in the back of my mind. I was working in a body shop, working in construction, and then kind of started my first IT job. I think it was just like 93, 94. So I've been in, the tech world for a long time, and then got into the whole .com stuff in the late 90s. I was living up in New England. So that's kind of when the really the tech bug bit me then, was what we saw around the .com era. And I remember, running a startup, everybody was just running full tilt. I was in my 20s, didn't know any different. I was like, this is great. Um, and then, the .com bubble burst, and all of our customers and our revenue stream evaporated in like 90 days. And I remember that was like a weird feeling, being in my mid 20s, trying to figure that out. But you're right, as an entrepreneur, you have to do everything, especially in startup mode. Um, and I remember vividly being let go from my job in 2004. My son was 6 months old. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to go. I'm not going to go work for somebody else again. We're going to start another business. I've been doing network logics on the side for a little while, since I think from 99 to 2004. But that's when we relaunched as a full-blown MSP, was in 2004. And this was like super early in the days of MSP. Like the tools that are available now were like nowhere near what they are now. But I remember rolling change in my living room while my wife is taking care of my 6-month-old son to get this business off the ground. And that puts us in an extensive amount of pressure, because, like you said, you're right. You don't have much in the bank, and it's sink or swim. But we did it. I turned it from rolling change in my living room till 10 years later being able to exit a successful MSP. So, but yeah, let me know in the comments too. We'll throw a few comments in here. Let Pete and I know whether or not you are actually an IT business owner, because I think, for those working in IT, Barbara definitely agrees IT gets taken advantage of all the time. But I'm curious to know the business owners that are on the show, because I think it's a different dynamic. It's a different added pressure that we have as entrepreneurs and as business owners in this space, because people don't really realize how many hats you're wearing and what you're responsible for in IT.
I think one of the challenges you have is, because when you're in that startup mode, you're going full tilt. And I think I saw a quote, was it last week, that working hard on something you love is called passion. Working hard on something you hate is called stress. And when you start a business, you're so passionate about everything, so you put all you can into it, and then it just kind of turns into the norm. So you've been doing those long days, you've been putting all the work in, but why would you slow down? Because you've been doing so well now, that let's keep it going, keep the momentum. And then 6 months have gone, a year's gone, 5 years has gone, and it just becomes very tiresome after a while, having to continue doing that constantly. And it doesn't even you don't even think to change it, because that's how it's always been.
Yep.
And you couldn't start up, or I mean you could, but it's very difficult to start up a business with that mindset of, I'm just going to work 9 to 5. I'm going to maybe have Fridays off. I'm going to spend time with the family, because you might not be able to, because you need finances, you need to bring in the money, but you're just not in that mindset because you're enjoying it so much. And I'm kind of in that stage, and I'm very aware of it this time around with the various businesses I'm a part of, and the YouTube and the videos and the coaching side of things, that uh, I'm very much in the passion and loving it stage right now. But I need to make sure that it's sustainable, so I carry on loving it in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and making it fit around what I want in my life this time around, rather than trying to go full tilt and then I'll hate it in 10 years and then need to change up again, or whatever it might be. So that's the challenge, I think, because you do start, um, you hit a certain kind of running rate, and then you just stay there until you pass out or
Yep.
stress hits. That's the thing, really.
Yeah, and I think in startup mode that we create a lot of bad habits, and it's hard. We talked about this before we went live. You and I are both workaholics. I'm still trying to recover from that, and I'm much more mindful of it this time around, like you mentioned, of how much I'm working and being able to have that passion, but being able to have it, work has its place. And I think it's a weird dynamic because we had a discussion a few weeks ago on work-life balance. Um, and that was like, I think I did a poll on LinkedIn. It was like 8,000 views, and that was like, but anyway, it's something that people still struggle with. But I look back on that, like you mentioned, I created a lot of those bad habits in startup mode, so it's hard to backpedal on that. And because you kind of you've created this monster that's kind of, animal of its own at some point as well. So based upon, kind of your takeaways with that now, I think you and I both have gone through that. Now that we're kind of on the outside looking in, if you will, we're able to see those things a little more clearly. Like I can pretty much spot somebody who's pretty close to burnout, who's pretty close to the edge, fairly quickly, just in comments and how people interact online. But it's from being there. That's where I was 7 years ago. I remember, working 70, 80, 90 hours a week was a badge of honor. Like I was proud of that. And the problem is that it takes its toll on you after a while. And I think so. How do we help MSPs who want to stay MSPs be able to think a little bit differently about that? Now, I kind of want to, talk a little bit about that. So we got quite a few that have commented as well. So we got Adam Voss on here as well. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You may know Adam. Yes, business owner. Yeah, it's very hard. So many hats to wear. So yeah, it is. And Dan's been at it a while too. Dan Foote from Alaska has been at it 15 years. Yeah, and again, sometimes I want to talk about that too at some point too. He says he's a slow growth company. And I want to talk a little bit about that kind of peer pressure that goes on in this industry, and I think in the entrepreneurial community in general, about how big you need to grow. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So Steve said he started G5 Technologies in 2004. So yes, we were born together, I guess, Steve. So see, we're connected way back. Here we are, a long time later. Adam says, yes, it's hard on your own. We're getting through a step change, which has been very difficult for us. He also said he's also been working with you, so he picked a smart choice. He's given me a sounding board as a virtual business partner to Resonate. Highly recommend.
It's not a paid for one, but thank you,
Now,
Adam.
but that's what I want to talk about today, too, is the resources that are available for MSPs that want to stay running but don't want to get to the place that I was 7 years ago. And I think you were either at that point or reaching that point, a year ago. So, let's talk a little bit, about that. How do we help MSPs be able to basically change that dynamic of trying to wear too many hats, trying to, because I think there's a fine line between providing good customer service and then having a life while running an IT business as well. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that.
One of the first ones as well is the business owners. And this is such a difficult one because the business owners themselves are so passionate and they're trying to focus on their staff and look after their staff. And even lots of the stuff I do with my clients is all around making sure your staff are okay and checking in on their mental health. And that's a big challenge in itself. There's not many moments where you get to stop and think about yourself and your own mental health, even though you probably already know it's suffering or you're stressed. But I remember we were going through a challenging time once back in the day of running an IT company, and one member of staff turned around and said, like, he just asked that question, like, "Are you okay, Pete?" And he was the first person that had asked that of like the month or two of this like huge stress we were all going through. And it kind of floored me at that time. The fact I remember it now to that day is just, I mean, that speaks volumes. But no one seems to really look out for the business owners themselves. So it's important, of course, that you look after your staff, but it's also more important, you're the one steering the ship, that you need someone looking out for you, or at least you need to be aware that you can take the time out or go and get help for yourself, or get some mental health training and those kind of things. Because one of my first go-tos is deploy a, a staff CSAT tool where you're surveying your staff and making sure they're happy and they're on target and they've got the right training and all those kind of things. But not at one point do you point that tool at yourself and then ask those same questions of yourself. So that's definitely one of the first challenges. And then the second one is just, it's knowing that you can take the time off. And that's such a big and difficult topic, because everybody feels and knows through and through that they can't take time off, because if they do, the business will fall apart. They'll lose customers. Staff won't be able to do their job because they need to ask you questions. And 100% you believe that because that's what it is. Because you're sat there in your office, people are asking you questions, you're dealing with emails. Like, what if you can't just switch it all off? And there is no real easy solution to any of that, because that's just that's the business wheel is turning. And the thing that that surprised me, much like any employee, I think, really, everyone thinks when they leave a company, the company's going to fall apart, because you're so kind of fundamentally a part of that business, whether you are an employee or whether you're the business owner. And seeing the transition going from running the company to handing it over to somebody, a completely different set of people, and it's still carried on. It's still there today, and still got the staff and the customers and those kind of things. So it is possible. It just makes you think, oh, I could have had time out. I just chose not to. And this goes to, I can't remember if we said it before the stream or in this one, but it comes down to it being a choice. It is your choice. You are prioritizing work over your mental health. You are choosing to prioritize work over time off with the family. And it's that choice that you need to try and shift and adjust and get comfortable with. There's that whole thing from, what is it, one of Mike McCallick's books. Is that a pumpkin plan, maybe, where you take off a short period of time, it's completely switch everything off, but take off a short period of time. Then you come back. If there's any issues, you deal with those issues. Then you take slightly longer off, come back, fix the issues, and you get to the stage where you've done that, and you can comfortably have a month off, and nobody drops the ball whilst you're away. Customers are all happy, staff are all happy, and I think that is such an important thing to try and implement if you can do. But it's so difficult because, particularly the world where we are right now, there are MSPs that are struggling. There are some that have niched into a market which is absolutely at its knees for like travel industry and airlines and those kind of things. That is a difficult situation, and genuinely, I wouldn't really know what to recommend, because you are struggling. Other than get out your niche and pivot, as a Friends famous character would say, pivot to something where you can start kind of earning the income. Maybe you can return to that at some point, but it's a massive topic. Absolutely.
Yep. And I think, nothing about this topic is easy. And, I think that's why a lot of people are afraid to touch the topic. But I think, you had touched on it being a choice. I learned a lot from Mike. I met Mike in 2012. And it was funny how we met. He was actually on stage, and I, just Twitter messaged him. I'm like, hey, I'll buy you a beer afterwards, thinking it was never going to happen. We ended up having dinner that night. But I learned a lot in that last couple of years leading up to the sale from Mike, and that was one of the big things that he taught me, and it is in Pumpkin Plan, that being an entrepreneur, that the definition of that is you don't do everything. You create the systems and process for people to be able to execute. And that was the mind shift that was different for me, because like you said, I was used to, okay, if I don't do this, if I'm not involved, it's not going to get done right, and we're going to have to redo it, or we're going to lose a customer over it. So I think a lot of that, is displacing that fear that's in our own heads as business owners, and just, kind of taking that leap of faith. But I think it goes back to creating those systems and process for people to be able to just walk, And that's hard. It's hard for people to go back and do that after the fact. But I think that's the first step to gaining that freedom. And again, sitting on the outside looking in, looking back on that, that's definitely something I wish I had done sooner, because I kept everything in my head. And we know, like, I had people's passwords memorized in my head, for certain accounts, so people didn't have to look it up in ConnectWise. I just knew if I was standing over their shoulder. But I think that's key, is just overcoming that fear and making that decision that you have that right to choose. And a lot of times we don't feel like it is. So lots of comments coming in on this. And this is what I want. I want to encourage discussion on how we change, just ideas of how we help each other. Barbara said too, she said, I'm my worst enemy for working. I started using the tools to turn off notifications. I set out of office replies and broke the clients of the habit of reaching me immediately. And that was really tough to do. That was probably the hardest thing, because we train our customers. We give them our cell phones, especially when we're first starting out. So it's hard to wean them off of calling your cell phone and to call the office, and you have staff now. So if you're just starting an MSP, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
You ever emailed Nigel from the Tech Tribe?
Yeah.
He is the best out-of-office response ever. It's just a blanket. I don't read my emails. Here are the people you need to contact for the various things. If it's important, my secretary will flag it, and I will get to it in maybe a week or two. Yep. And that's like sex expectations. Hey, if it's urgent, if it's a customer problem, then it will get redirected to the right department. But it's fantastic, and like everybody should do that. It makes such a good use of the email tool.
And that's I still do that. We talked about that before the show. Like, all notifications are turned off on my phone. Like, it is in do not disturb mode 24/7. I pick up my phone literally twice a day. I think, the notification I got Sunday, I think 8 minutes a day was my iPhone report last week.
Oh, mine is really bad, but that's by choice.
Yeah. And, I did a whole show about this a few months ago, and I think, how many times a day do you pick up your phone? And I think us as IT people, that's especially, we're constantly on that because that's what we do. So it's hard to break that habit. But I love that, Barbara, and that you've taken, turning the notifications off. And I've done that, because I remember when COVID first started, that's kind of what happened to me. And that's why they're completely off now, because notifications were constantly going off. Everybody had to work from home. Everybody knew. I didn't even have an IT business, but I was getting calls from all over the country from people that I've helped 10 years ago that want help figuring this out now. Besides friends and family, just everybody's bored at home and are texting you. But that's where I found my mental state going haywire. And I remember that was like Pavlov's dog. I remember when notifications would go off, I remember how I felt a year ago was exactly how I felt 7 years ago. That every time a notification went off, my blood pressure would raise. Like, you get flustered, because I knew that it was likely a problem that I had to fix. So that's probably a minimal, easy step to take, but it's hard for your own mental sanity, I would definitely do that. I've actually seen some companies turning off the notifications in their office where their techs are, just because it's kind of, it is. It's like, that science experiment, when the alert goes off, everybody's blood pressure goes up, everybody's on high alert. And that's not necessary. It's always been that way in the IT industry, but I think the critical measure we're seeing that now in mental health, I think that might be an important thing. Maybe it's just one day where you turn all the notifications off and kind of take turns. But I think we're going to have to get creative in dealing with that solution. But like you said, I think it starts at the top. It starts from the people, those of us that are leading companies need to start, because we set a lot of expectations on our staff because of how we work. They think they have to work the same way. So I think that, that's important. So Mike said he's been in the business since 2002, so he's been around for a while. But again, if you guys have recommendations of things that are working for you, or decisions that you've had to make, or changes that you've had to make, to save your mental sanity, share those, because it may be something Pete and I have not thought of doing. But that's one of the first things that I did, during that, like the first 8 weeks of the COVID, like it was nuts. Like I literally, I found myself in a mental state that I was 7 years ago, and I'm like, I'm not going back there. So it's like from that day, you have to reset expectations. I've reset expectations with my family, my friends. I'm like, look, you text me, I'm going to check it twice a day. I check it at 11:30 before lunch. That's the last half hour before lunch, and I check it at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. Anything comes in before or after that, that's when I deal with it.
But you've made me recheck my my notifications. I'm trying a new Android phone out. I'm trying to switch from iPhone to Android, and there's a screensaver that tells you how many times you've unlocked your phone. And I don't know if it will focus on that. It's probably not going to focus. Oh, no, 'cause my face is in the way.
There it goes. Yep. 20 times.
It's at the very top.
Oh, okay. 71.
Basically, it's 71 times. And I told you before this live stream that I've just played a round of golf for the whole day and didn't look at my phone once. So that means I've unlocked it 71 times in an actual relatively very small amount of time. So that's made me think again.
So I think that that's a practical thing that we can do as IT owners, and that was one of the things I would suggest. Even if it's just 1 day a week, start there. But I think we don't do enough of that as business owners to take that time because we don't think that we can afford it. But you hit the nail on the head. If we don't take that time, there's nobody leading the ship, and our staff looks to us as that example. So
there's one practical thing I might want to mention, actually. That's there's quite a few MSP owners that I work with and that I've spoken to, and I mean, it's common practice, I think, really, that when you're in that small startup phase, and even when you're a larger business, I think actually you'll take the clients on, you'll promise to deliver the work really, really quickly. Hey, you want the work done? Yeah, we'll do that for you. It doesn't matter what our lead times are, we'll do it. And what that means is either the staff or the actual owners themselves are doing the work in their evenings and in their spare time. Yep. And for free. They're not charging anything extra for it. Whereas actually the practical response should be to those clients of, yes, we can do that. We are fully booked up until, whenever your next proper availability is in terms of the scheduling. Or we can do that for you sooner, but it's going to be out of hours. It's going to cost you extra. So it turns that kind of process from doing it for completely free and in a very quick response time to actually putting it back on the customer and saying, hey, we can deliver it in normal working hours, but it's going to be 2 weeks or a month off. Or we can still do it overnight. If it really is that kind of desperately urgent, then we'll do it, but you've got to pay extra for it.
Yep.
And that's a win-win because you then get paid extra for it, whether it's you doing it yourself or you're paying a member of staff to do it. But just the fact of getting paid for it. And there are so many MSPs out there that are doing a lot of work and not getting paid for it because they just think that they need to, because they need to win the business, or the customers are going to go somewhere else if they don't charge for it. And there are so many people that I deal with that bill a lot of like pay and go stuff, but they're just not charging for it because, again, they just don't want to. But they're going to get an invoice. They're probably going to not like it if they get an invoice. It's like, yeah, but you're spending a lot of time on these little bits and bobs, and that just adds more stress because you feel like you're working all the hours of the day because you are, but you're not charging for half of it. Yep. And then you wonder why maybe you haven't got enough income coming in. Whereas actually, if you just build for that time, you'd be happy as Larry because you get the income in, put you in a really stable position. So there are those small tweaks where you just change the communication back to the client and just say, hey, this is the situation. We can do it, but it's going to cost you extra. Yep. That's such a big shift change.
And I think, now more than ever, if I was an MSP and you needed to reset expectations with clients, I think now is like the perfect time because they're all doing it themselves. They're all resetting expectations inside their own companies. So I think it's time for us to take that lead in, okay, we've been doing this for a while. This is a change that we're going to need to make. And like you said, again, it goes back to that fear in our own minds as to what could happen. But I found that, over 10 years of running an MSP, every time that we increased pricing or we did things like that, we didn't lose a single customer. And it was funny because I actually had one customer come back and said, I was wondering when you were going to start charging us for that. And he's like, I fully expected to pay for that. And, your customers understand, especially, we deal a lot with decision makers, business owners themselves inside the companies we service. So they know. But I think now is a perfect time to go back and reset expectations of what's in your contracts, what's serviceable, what's not serviceable, and just it is a perfect time to do that. But that is a great suggestion. So I think from
I
the
think the capacity
practical,
planning section is actually a really important thing because if you are working all hours of the day, and if you just bill for it, and you're still maybe a week or two out because you've got so much work stacked up, well, if you're actually billing for that properly, that would probably pay for the next person of staff to come on and then take the workload off you if
yep,
you're billing for it properly. And then, hey, if you're a month or 2 months out, that's the next person, so you can start stacking up, have multiple engineers working on the project work. So it all goes towards, if you just set the expectations, like you say, properly from the get go, and get the work done properly, hopefully by your staff, if you've got the staff that can do it. I appreciate with the smaller MSPs, it's difficult because the owners themselves are probably the most senior technical person, so they're still trying to work that challenge of getting the senior work away from them, and that's a difficult challenge in itself because, and maybe we chat about that briefly, but recruiting the senior technical staff, I don't know about you, but it's such a difficult thing. In all
yep,
the businesses I've been in the business that I owned, to hire in at the senior level is so difficult because you're looking for someone that's very generally good at everything.
yep,
Whereas if you go and recruit for a specialist, recruit for a senior person, you'll just get a specialist. You'll get someone that knows 365 inside and out, but nothing else. You'll get Citrix through and through, but nothing else. And it's such a difficult position to be in. So we always found it's best to um, recruit at the junior level and bring them through the company, and that's happened in 2 or 3 businesses that I've worked in. But I'd be interested to know if anyone else is having that same issue with hiring senior techs, because it's one of the first things you want to try and get away from yourself because you are the senior tech, but
yep.
it's one of the most difficult people to hire.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So if you have comments on things that are working for you as far as hiring, I'm gonna jump back over to some of the folks who've jumped in. I'm gonna cover Dan's. He said we look for quality clients versus quantity. Quality allows us to better focus on the service delivery. Quantity brings in a level of anxiety that simply compounds the anxieties that already exist in the industry. Um, so that's an interesting dynamic too. But having that mindset, that was one of the things I got from Mike Michalowicz in Pumpkin Plan, was going back and pruning the vine, getting rid of bad clients. But it's more important to never take on those bad clients in the first place. So I think part of that
I think
gets,
that's quite a difficult thing because you need to go through some of those to be able to spot the difficult clients.
yep,
And it's only when you get to a certain stage, and we had that. Oh, it was really late in the years, maybe like 6 or 7 years in, where I was at the initial sales meeting or the prospecting, or even in some cases, we were multiple meetings in just before signing the quote off, and I would be turning around saying, "Look, I'm just not getting a good feeling about this. I think if you're not sure about this, then you're going to really hate it when we send you like the quote for the server refresh or whatever it's going to be. So, if you're not feeling right, then hey, there's no pressure. Just let's kind of call it quits, and we can help you find somewhere else, because it's the wrong thing to do to take it on for the sake of it. Absolutely.
yeah, and again, it's really tough to do to fight that challenge when you're in startup mode. When all you need is anybody who can write a check and fog a mirror, you're a
You want to
customer.
pay me money? I'll take your money. Yeah.
And that's super hard to do. So, Chris said too, I wonder if taking time off is putting more work on my staff, and wonder if I would increase their workload stress for doing that. Um, that's an interesting dynamic, but I think too, if they're involved in the decision and they're involved and know that they will get their turn as well. I think that's kind of a communication thing internally for staff. That's how I would approach that, because yes,
I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
it may increase their workload in the interim, but I think if this is a discussion that you're having as a company, that you're interested in the well-being and mental health of your employees as well, this is our plan for dealing with that, and they know that they're included in that process. I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise. They know that they're going to have to carry the load if you decide, okay, I'm going to take 1 day a week or 1 day a month where I'm checking out. So what would your
We did a
suggestion?
few situations both in my own MSP and with ones I've worked with previously, where we would just say, if you've got a lot of work coming through, just buy everyone pizza, maybe pay them, maybe pay them overtime. There are some situations, not myself, but in my previous MSP, where they're like, we've got a difficult situation, we're struggling, but we need to get the work done. can we just buy you pizza? We can't pay you for it, but can we just buy you pizza? Everyone's stuck in because everyone knows, hey, we need to really get stuck in here. We need to get the work done so we can then get on top of things. So just simple things like that, like just, pizza goes down really well with engineers. So if you can just say, hey, let's just everyone stay till 10 o'clock if you want to. There's no pressure or anything, but it would be great if we could all stay on and let's just bash through the work. And then tomorrow we can come in. We've caught on up at everything. We've done all the kind of day-to-day stuff. So let's just now set the precedent of now we're doing 9 to 5 because we're on top of stuff. And if you've got, so much work that actually you are doing it every single night from the technical work, then have a few nights. Maybe do a late night Wednesday every week where you just buy the pizza and pay a bit of overtime. Something that you can talk about with the staff and just say, hey, we've got the work. How do we deal with this? What would you guys be happy with?
Yeah, and I think you touched on that right there. Get your staff involved in the conversation. I think that was one of the worst mistakes that I made, early on when we were bringing new people on, is just dictating to them all day. You need to do it this way. This is what I want you to do. When I started getting my staff involved in like creating SOPs, creating our processes and getting input on that changed completely how invested they were. And it was easier to get them to commit when we needed them to do a little bit of extra. But that's what we told them. This is not going to become the normal habit. But that's what we would do. Like every Friday afternoon, we would debrief all of the service tickets for the week. And I would let them come up with the ideas of how do we make this ticket never come in the first place? If it comes in, how can we automate the solution? And 3, is this an education issue? Is this a matter of educating our clients a little bit better of how to actually manage that on their own and empowering them? Those 3 things worked well, but yes, you have to have your staff involved. But yeah, again, it goes back to that fear, Chris, of, your staff's going to run out the door screaming, because you want to take a day off. But again, if they know that you guys are going to get the same thing, that maybe that's what you do for your staff. Okay, you guys have one extra day off now because of all the things we've dealt with over the last year. I think you got to get creative right now more than ever. LinkedIn actually gave their entire staff the April 5th through the 9th. Everybody was off. So I don't know. I meant to cover that on my show, but I thought that was an interesting thing I realized we couldn't do that in the IT industry. But I thought it was creating something that was outside the box, that they understood the extra pressure that this last year has brought on everybody and decided that's how they were going to deal with it. I couldn't tell you how many people internally in that company, posted. I'm connected with a couple senior folks at LinkedIn, and like the goodwill that you bought from doing something small like that will last years. I've had people say they will not go anyplace else, because even a company that large like LinkedIn gets it. Like they decided they were going to be proactive and do something about it. So again, you know your staff better than Pete and I do as to, what would resonate the most with your staff as far as being able to give them the time off and the extra time. And, that's going to allow that reciprocity. They're going to want to follow that leader, somebody like yourself who's doing the proactive things. And that's really, why I wanted to start this discussion of how we change it and just thinking outside of what everybody else says that we should do. That's what this whole show is, doing what's necessary for you and stop listening to everybody else. Pete and I will just give you suggestions. And again, it's up to you to kind of take these and figure out what actually works for yourself. But a lot of it we carry inside of our own heads as entrepreneurs, especially in the tech industry. So Dan said the same thing. He has the same problem. He's his, major challenge for him, being your own worst enemy. See, Steve here said, I've not carried out any IT work for about 6 years now. My role is business development and paying suppliers and wages. So kudos to you for creating that structure that allows your staff to be able to carry that out. And that doesn't get done enough. And I think, kind of touched on that. What point did you start realizing too, Pete, that creating those processes for people to just take the ball and run with it like when did you really start getting, drilled into doing that, and so that you could kind of peel away and focus like Steve is on the business development?
I think it was fairly early on in a sense, but also going back to the whole enjoyment and passion thing. I actually still liked doing some of the technical stuff. So by choice, I was still working. Some days and still right towards the end, I would still sit on a help desk because it's just nice to have the FaceTime with the customers and see what's really going on. Almost like that, like the secret boss type thing, but obviously not secret because everyone knows you're there. But it was just nice to speak to those customers and having that experience. Just simple things like that. It just have a big impact on the staff and the customers as well, just to see that's going on.
I think that's something. It does get easier, and I like how Adam chimed in too for Chris. Definitely the first time is hard, but then does get easier. His last holiday, they told it was better without me. Yes, again, sometimes we create, just our presence can kind of create that tension. So, and again, I think that's telling too that one of your staff pointed that out for you last year too, asking if you were okay. Because everybody's watching whether we think they are or not. And again, I think so much goes back to our example as business owners and what we set as the standard of what can and can't be done. But yeah, thanks for Adam for helping out there too. Mike said decentralized command is jock willing extreme ownership terms. I'm not familiar with jock willing, but yeah, I think that is super hard to do to be able to let go of your baby. I've read a lot of people view their business as their child. And that was one of the things that I'm adamant that it was interesting. I've posted that a few times, and I've talked about that on the show previously, was viewing your company as a product and not your child. That's something that I wish I had done with my last, because your approach is different if you view your company as a product like software, where, yes, it's got bugs in it, so you work to fix the bugs, and it's constantly improving. And that's hard to do, is to think of it in those terms, but I wish I would have, because that was kind of the tough transition for me when I sold the company, and I finally, after working 6 months in the transition where I was completely out of it at that point, I realized how much of my self-esteem and self-worth was tied to that company because of viewing it as your kid.
And just decision making as well. I found that very much like yourself, coming out and now starting these various new businesses that we're doing. The focus from day one is delegate from day one. One of my first hires, or one of the first things I did was hire a VA, and we didn't have a VA or a PA or anyone to kind of manage my work and schedule and anything along those lines. But now I'm so focused on, I just need to offload anything that's unnecessary straight away, so that I don't get bogged down in detail. I don't get used to that, so it's not the new standard, and just hand it out. And that's the only way you can really scale, is by having that focus from day one of, let's just get off anything that's unnecessary. Yeah, accounts and billing and the techie work and the legals, and really to the point, if you want to, of course, because it's all driven again by your choices and your decisions of where do you want to be. And very much for myself, the great kind of situation would be that you would be that visionary person. You're kind of sat at the top, kind of deciding what the direction of the company and maybe the products you're going to use and all the services and those kind of things. And then you can step away, have your holiday, everything carries on running because that's the day-to-day stuff that's still going. And then you can come back and go, okay, today we're going to do this. And I was really bad at doing that because I'd do that like every other week and all the staff would have to catch up with me. But yeah, learning curve for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's possible. I think, again, looking back on what things I would fix in my MSP, knowing what I know now and just the different approach to it, that's exactly what I would have done much sooner. I didn't start doing those things until the recession hit because I was relying on, referrals and just whatever fell in our lap. Excuse me. But I started at that point creating, man. Anyway, it's allergy season. We talked about that beforehand too.
I've also just noticed I've made a big faux pas. Hang on a minute, I need to fix it.
I'm going to mute myself real quick, take a drink. All right.
Is that orange? It's kind of orange.
It's
not bright enough to be orange. I just changed the background color. I realized I should have tried to match it.
It's all good. But yeah, I think that I would have done that much sooner. The delegation process, and I think we see that in the different forums and the different people that we coach right now that have a hard time with that delegation, hiring a personal assistant or a VA. But kind of talk about that, just kind of the process for that as you've stepped away, started a new company. How would you change that if you were still running your MSP?
Just do more of that first. I think that's the focus, and that's the interesting thing, because when you do step away from it, I look back on myself and how I was running things, and you see so many opportunities to fix those problems or get yourself out, to free yourself up to do the more important things, which is helping find the new clients and the direction of the company and the strategy and all the. And this is why I love the coaching stuff, because it's my opportunity now to do all of the fun stuff. Like let's look at how we're going to price up things. Let's look at marketing strategy. Let's deal with all the challenges without having to get into the day-to-day, the staff issues and HR and legals and unhappy clients and those kind of things. We still get to deal with those, but the focus is more on the high level stuff that's going to make a bigger change overall. And when you're not in it every day, like you say, it's when you stop treating it like a child. When you're losing a customer, you don't take it so hard. Yep. You just look at the stats and actually make time and time I'd look at the stats and go, we've got these customers that are making a loss or making we're not making anything off of, but they're really nice people and I really like them. But actually, you carry on doing that for so long, and you just don't get anywhere because you were just putting so much time and effort into them. When actually, if you step back and took off the personal connection kind of hat, you can then go, okay, we need to fix this. We either need to approach them and discuss some changes or billing increases or whatever it's going to be, or we need to drop them and then focus on the profitable clients, which is a horrible decision many people have to go through. And that's why we struggle, because you don't want to just drop the clients because you like them. And right. Actually, again, if that's your choice, then that's your choice. But it does get to a stage when you step back and you go, well, hey, we've got a lot of these clients that are not bringing in profit or revenue or income or whatever it is. We need to do something about it. And it becomes a lot easier once you're detached than being in the day-to-day constantly.
Yeah. And I think, if you're listening to this live on the show or you're watching this after the fact, that would probably be one of the best takeaways that I could give you, is to do that. The sooner you start viewing your company as a product instead of something that you're emotionally attached to, like Pete said, your decisions do change dramatically just in your viewpoint. But it does. It changes. Okay, it's about improvement, and cutting out the stuff that isn't working for you does become easier. That was one of the things Mike Michalowicz taught me, because that was the first time I met him. He was promoting Pumpkin Plan. But he walks you through a process of being able to grade your customers, and it's not always about how much money they give you, how big of the check is that they write you every month. Because what I actually found is one of our top paying customers was also our worst customer. And because every time that an email came in, ticket was put in, or he'd be on the phone, or anybody from his company, again, it raised tensions in the office. Everybody hated working with them. And that was difficult for me because I was emotionally attached to it, because he's connected to 2 or 3 other clients because they were in the same industry. So it was a tough decision to make. And I remember being getting some advice directly from Mike on that. And sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And that was one of the best decisions that I made as an MSP. I remember that day vividly. He had called me arguing because I think we made $25 on a print cartridge. We made $25 profit on a print cartridge that we overnighted to one of his offices on a Saturday. And that was the premium for making me do it on a Friday night. to get it there. So he was all bent out of shape about that. But I remember that conversation vividly, that was the day I was all done. And that was the day I told him, you're paid through the end of the month. We're going to make it as easy as possible for you to transition to somebody else, but you need to go find somebody else. And I remember that vividly because this was like a $5,000 a month contract. So it was hard from financially, but that was the best thing that I could have done, was getting rid of him. But the staff was ecstatic because, it was just that relief. And that is one of those other things that it's hard to do as a business owner, but I think it's essential because it was great because the 3 customers that I was worried about losing, because they all knew him and he sat on the board of directors for the association. When I went and told those other 3 that, okay, we let so-and-so, we dropped him as a client. We just wanted to let you know what happened so you hear it from us. All 3 of them said, I can't believe you hired him. You took him on as a client in the first place. They all knew what a jerk he was. And it was interesting because the director of the association that was one of our top clients, she would tell me every time they had a board meeting, there was somebody on the board that was trying to get our contract kicked because he thought they were paying too much. It turns out it was him. And she finally told me that after, him being a customer for like 3 years. She's like, it was him. It was him that has been trying to get rid of your contract for 10 years. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but it really allowed me to be mentally free. And an interesting thing happened. We picked up 3 extra customers in 90 days that doubled what we were making from him. But the extra time and effort we were taking and being sidetracked with him, it freed us up to be able to have the bandwidth to take on 3 new customers. So again, that gets easier to do if you are viewing your company as a product versus something you're emotionally attached to. So